I told you that the best lessons that you learn won't be from a textbook, they won't be from a classroom, but it will actually be from traveling. And travel, it pushes you out of your comfort zone. So let's kind of break it down, because I feel like traveling is the gateway to success that a lot of people don't know about, or they feel like, oh, you have to have a lot of money to travel. And so I'm gonna get into that too, of how to travel on a budget later on in the video. But I have my notes over here, so if you see me looking that way, so I have some notes. So when I first started traveling, so I traveled a little bit as a kid. Like my middle school, they had one of the programs, I can't remember what it's called, but it's basically like a little summer trip that some schools, like high schools or universities, will offer to the students, where they pay a certain amount, and then they'll go through like an organization to facilitate the trip and everything, and to be our chaperones. So I, did that as a kid, and then visited a few family members. But it wasn't until I had got 19 where I really started like traveling and planning my own trips. It's not like, I'm a little kid, so I just got to go along with whatever somebody else has planned. Like, I can actually plan the trip myself. And so the first trip that I planned for myself was to go to Denver. And my dad ended up tagging along with me, and it changed our relationship for the better, because we were able to get out of the environment that we had always been in, and we were able to have fun with each other in a new place that didn't have no negative associations. We both had never been to Denver, so we didn't know anything about the city, so it got to be a nice, fun experience for us to kind of heal and start fixing our relationship. That was like the first time that I took public transportation. First time I got to see the mountains. First time planning a trip myself. And then my dad, he hadn't been traveling in a very long time, since he was in the Marines. And so this maybe had been like 30 years since he had got on the flight for the first time again. And so I didn't know in the beginning, before I planned all of that, where it would lead me to in life. And I've gotten to be around other people who also travel as well, meet them as well. And it's kind of a very similar story, where traveling ends up being a gateway of growth and opportunity. And so, and I don't know if y'all seen like the video where Steve Harvey is like, if you fly first class one time, you're gonna always figure out how to keep flying first class. And it's like the same thing with travel. Like, once you travel, there's no going back. There's no going back. There's no going back. But yeah, it's a way for you to try new things that you've never done before, and to see new things that you've never done before. because the city that I grew up in, we didn't get to have a lot because high crime rates. So we didn't get to have like all the nice amenities that people in other cities don't really think twice about. I'll give you an example. Scooters. The little Uber scooters and Lyft scooters. I thought it was a scam when I first went to Denver and we saw those scooters just sitting out there. Like, we thought it was a scam at first because I grew up in a city where those scooters would have been snatched up and broken apart and sold for scrap metal. Like, you grew up in a city where you cannot leave anything sitting out because you'll look away, turn back, and it's gone. And so getting to be in another city where that's not the energy, where you always have to be looking over your shoulder, holding on to your purse so tight, it was a different experience. And just getting to see nature and beauty, because I grew up in swampy areas on the coast, so there was no mountains. There was no it was like no nice like forest and stuff and in nature areas. It was like pretty much swamps. Like, you would have trees and stuff, but it wouldn't be too like the old pretty nice aesthetic trees that you see like in Oregon and Colorado. It wasn't none of that. So you just like get out there and see so much that is different. And because you're having such a positive experience, it makes you want to do it again. And in order to do it again, you're going to need to step out of your comfort zone again. You're going to need to get more money again. Because, like, right, you could go and do it for cheap, but eventually, you know what? Citizen in economy, let's go sit in business this time. So as time goes on, you're constantly pushing that comfort zone and that bandwidth. And by your 5th trip, it's going to be drastically different from your first. And going to be drastically different from your 20th trip. I don't know if, like, a great channel for you guys to watch traveling is Kara and Nate. They started out as backpackers. They took the money that they had, which wasn't a lot. I think they said that they had saved up like $30,000. I could be wrong, but they said they had saved up $30,000 and went backpacking through, I think, like Asia first. And so that's how they started their YouTube channel, and they, just kept videos and uploaded, but they would stay in, like hostels and stuff, and fly economy, everything like that. That's how they first started out, was cheap backpacking. And then if you go to their channel now, you see them on first class flights. You see them on some of the most expensive train rides. And where traveling really gets to be their full-time job. And they just get to have such an amazing experience. And it's crazy to see how their videos, they keep developing, and how the plot keeps going. Like, okay, first they started off backpacking. Then, okay, they started doing a little bit of business class and staying in a few decent hotels, and then getting up to some of the more higher stuff, and then being they're getting to the point now where they're being some of the first people that companies are reaching out to uh, about their products and everything, travel products. And so you get to see that progress, and I think they're an amazing example of how traveling can change your life. And you just have to step out into your comfort zone from everything. Everything. For me personally, like I said in the beginning, um, traveling by myself, had to get used to that. Navigating a new city, had to get used to that. Trying new foods, had to get used to that. And being in much safer environments, had to get used to that. That was a new one. Getting to go to other cities, that was a lot safer than where I grew up. And so it's just a completely different experience than being at home. And like, if you want to quantum leap like your growth as a person, travel. It literally throws you into a completely new environment that you aren't in every single day. So let me look at my notes. And another thing is that I want to bring up is that traveling gave me a reason to go to work every day. It gave me a reason to clock in every day. Because I would just sit there, and when it would get hard, I'd be like, I gotta go to Thailand. I gotta make it to Thailand. I gotta get my swim out pool in Thailand. I gotta clock in today. I gotta get on my first class flight. I gotta do this. I gotta do that. It gave me the motivation to keep going to work. On those days that was hard, I was looking at my trip inspo pics. I was reminding myself of where I wanted to be, what I wanted to experience. Reminding myself that I'm clocking in so that I could go sit on the beach in Thailand, living my best life. That's why I'm clocking in. That's why I'm getting up every day. Because sometimes you really do need that motivation. And when you've already traveled and you know how it feels, because it is a rush, a rush of dopamine and happiness and just newness. And so it gets like locked into your brain as a good, nice memory. And so when you're at work sitting there struggling, when you're having hard days, I literally just click into those memories and click into where I want to go next. And that's what gives me the motivation to get through those hard days. So that's a whole nother benefit of traveling, is that it keeps you focused about where you want to go to next. And so let's get in real quick to how to travel if you are on a budget, don't have a lot of money, or if it's just your first time and you may not want to be at the Ritz-Carlton on your first ever trip that you planned. You might want to, do something a little less crazy. So I would, recommend day trips. So that's how I started out traveling, was with day trips. What is a day trip? You get the first flight out, the last flight in. So let's say you're going to Phoenix. You get the 6 a.m. flight to Phoenix. You get that 8 p.m. flight back home. So you're not staying at a hotel or anything. You get on that flight early in the morning and you get on that last flight at night. So because of that, you're not going to be paying for a hotel, which is typically like $200 a night. Another thing is the best travel tip is to buy the flight first. I can't tell you how many times, my sister, she's a travel agent. I can't tell you how many times it's such a drastic price difference between her clients who buy the flight months ahead of time versus the people who try to do it a few days prior to the trip. The first thing you should always book, whether you're doing a day trip or whether you're doing some days and actually staying, buy the flight first and buy it months ahead of time. That's when flights are the cheapest. The price of flights do not go down. They only keep increasing as that date gets closer and closer and closer. So the best way to get a cheap flight is to book it days in advance. And what you could do, you could use Google Flights. You can also use Southwest. They have a low fare calendar, but Southwest been having a whole lot going on recently. So, to each his own, but just go through and look at the different days. Typically during the week, it's going to be the cheapest. But look for months in advance, at least 2 months in advance. At least 2. Because not only will this give you time to take time off and get your PTO approved, and if it doesn't get approved, you will still have time to go in and change that flight and get your credit back. And then just use that credit for a better day. So always do it in advance. That is the cheapest way to get a flight. Most of the time my flights are under $200 round trip because I go and buy the ticket months in advance. So recommend day trips. So not staying multiple nights, just a day trip, first flight out, last flight in. Booking a flight months in advance, because that's when you're going to get the best price. And the next thing that I recommend is planning your itinerary ahead of time as well. So to, set a budget that you want to kind of stay at, and then plan transportation. Is this a good city for public transit? Some cities don't have a great public transit. So you will most likely need to take Ubers everywhere. How much are the Ubers there? Some places Ubers are a lot more expensive than others. So really think about it. Do you want to take public transit? Do you want to take Uber? I wouldn't recommend getting a rental car, because that right there, it's like $100-something a day after all the fees and everything. So I wouldn't recommend getting a rental car. I would recommend either Uber or public transit, because if you get public transit, you could get like an all-day pass for like $10. So, really go through and plan, okay, what are the activities that I want to do? How much do they cost? How am I going to get there? And break it down by time. Okay, so in the morning, I'm going to go do these 2 activities. Then I'm going to Uber here and I'm going to Uber there. Okay, if you're going to Uber 5 times a day, Uber costs $10 for each trip. That's $50 for the Uber. You got this activity, that's $10. Got this activity, that's $20. Okay, now we're at $80. Okay, and then you got to eat. Do your credit card give you, if you have a credit card that give you lounge access? Do you not? If you do have one that give you lounge access, then obviously you can use that. If you don't, then you know you'll have to figure out a few couple of meals. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. I don't recommend getting food at the airport because you know it's already going to be super expensive. It's going to be 3 times the amount it's supposed to be. Only thing I recommend getting at the airport is possibly water. But yeah, so if you do a few activities, depending on your budget. So let's use my first Denver trip for example. We did, we took the train to the downtown. And then we took a few Ubers. So that right there was about $50. So $50, and then we did an activity where we took a tour bus up through the mountains and they took us to like some pretty nice spots to take pictures. That was like $100 a person, so $200 in total for me and my dad. So we're at $250. Then we went to Meow Wolf, which I think was like $20. So 40, so we're at $290. And then we ate at we ate at 2 places. So could do like 40, so $330. And then I paid for both of our flights. So the flights was about $200 each. So it came out, that trip came out to be $700 for 2 people. And we could have done cheaper stuff. But that trip for 2 people was $700. If we would have tried to stay like the whole week or stay a few days, that would have took us well into like over $2,000. If we tried to do a couple of days worth of stuff, because I've gone back to Denver and done a couple of days, that's a couple of thousand. That's like $1,000, $2,000. So 700 versus 2,000, and that's 700 for 2 people. And we didn't go to the, remember we went to the mountains, so we took a full, we did a half-day tour. And so that was $200 right there. If we did something else, then, you know, that would have been a lot cheaper, but, yeah. So that's my best advice on how to do travel that's a little bit cheaper. Another thing is, the closer you go, the cheaper the flight will be. So for example, if you go to like Houston to New Orleans, that's like a 45-minute flight. I think it's like $60 on Southwest for a one-way. So it's gonna be cities that are gonna be significantly cheaper than others to go to. But like for example, if you try to go to California, flights to California is gonna be cha-ching, cha-ching. That's gonna be like $600 just for the flight if you want to go to California. But if you go somewhere else, let's say like to Atlanta, depending on where you live, that might be $160 round trip. So it's just things like that. I say it is possible to plan a great trip under $1,000. You can go even cheaper. Depending on your location, where you are. But yeah, if you can scrub together, like for example, if you drive to like Houston to Dallas or Austin, you know, wherever, like some of the major cities in Texas, sometimes they're not too far away from each other, and you can make it like, you know, a 3-4 hour road trip. Fill up the tank, get in a smaller, you know, car, fill up the tank for $75, vroom vroom all the way there. You know, fill up the tank, vroom vroom all the way there. Do a few things, you know, go eat at a few places, come back. That'll, you know, cost you a few hundred. So things like that can also make it cheaper, but it's a way to figure it out. But I would say honestly, you can plan a trip for $500. So don't think, oh, if I go traveling, I gotta spend thousands of dollars. No, you don't. No, you don't. But you would definitely need to obviously save up a few, couple of $100s, depending on where you are in life. That may be easier said than done. But if you can save up a few $100s, and you can go on a trip. And then that trip will motivate you to go make more money, to go get, you know, a better job so that you can have more money to take more trips, and then it just keeps going. It keeps going. And then, you know, you get a new job that pays even more money. So that way you can go on even more trips and do even fancier stuff. And so that is pretty much what I wanted to get off my chest, because I see a lot where people are like, you know, I can't afford to travel, I can't afford to do this, I can't afford to do that. I don't have thousands of dollars to drop on a trip. It doesn't have to be thousands of dollars. So make sure you go travel. It's very important. It will quantum leap you into a whole new reality. Everybody that I've seen who caught the travel bug, their life is completely different from where it first started. So go out there, catch the travel bug, and just go and create joy in your life. And I will see you guys in the next video.